DisChem has reported pleasing progress across its divisions. This saw its revenue jumping 9.6%, further translating to a 16.3% increase in headline earnings per share. Joining me now with analysis on the performance is DisChem CEO Rui Morais. Rui, thanks so much for your time today. So DisChem's defensive nature are really working for the group, with revenue and HEPS both increasing. Right at the top, Rui, just take us through the 6 months that was for the company.
Sure. So I think a pleasing set of results, as we said. I think from our perspective, a resilient top-line number, as you described. I think non-discretionary retail does have the benefit of what is a very value-conscious market. Pleasingly, in the revenue number was the continued market share gains that we do get through our wholesale division as we supply to independent markets. And then filtering through to the bottom line, which really drove kind of differentiated earnings growth at just north of 15%, was just the ability for us to manage costs. And I think we did that quite tactically. We didn't compromise on service by implementing a new staffing framework. So, I mean, that kind of cost management just resulted in positive operating leverage, which dropped all the way down to the bottom. So, I mean, in summary, it was probably the two fundamental highlights of this set of results.
Talk to us about those cost-containing measures. The group did mention that there was a positive in payroll cost containment measures supporting the bottom line. Take us through those initiatives and whether they can be sustained moving forward.
So I think what we did is, I mean, we come from a very entrepreneurial background where we had decentralized decision-making. And by that, what I mean is, many of our managers have the ability to staff their own stores. I think there are pros and cons to that. I think when you get to a group of our scale, the ability to centralize that decision and ensure consistency of staffing kind of unlocked additional resources that we were able to then deploy into the new stores that we opened. So we didn't compromise on the price point of resource. In other words, we didn't pay anyone less. We didn't look to cut pay. What we really did was utilize our overinvested base, our overinvested heads, and we use them for our new space. So if you look at like-for-like cost, our like-for-like cost in real terms was down close on 7%, and those heads or those people were redeployed into the new stores that we opened.
Now, the group is repositioning itself away from just being a pharmacy retailer, Rui. What has the progress looked like on that front? I know you are on track to becoming a integrated health, or rather developing an integrated health ecosystem with the launch of Dis-Chem Live next year.
Sure. So, I mean, the concept of an integrated health ecosystem is a relatively fancy terminology. I think for all intents and purposes, what it means is it's intended to deliver on a mandate of increasing access to healthcare and reducing costs. And simply, how we intend achieving that is to ensure that the retail part of our business, so dispensaries, clinics, our front shop, are complementary of what we consider the financial services part of our business. So when we launch financial services or products into the financial services space, they need to make sense through a healthcare lens, whether it's medical insurance, gap cover. Even when we launch life, the way that we think about life needs to be through a healthcare lens. So currently what we do as a business is we manage risk indirectly. We make sure that people stay adherent to their chronic medication. We understand the adherent nature of people. And the way the life market prices at the moment is it essentially prices based on a chronic condition. So it doesn't actually take into account how you manage your chronic condition. And there are many healthy people that are diagnosed as not healthy just as a function of their condition, when in actual fact, they stay healthy, they take the medication, we service them, we understand them, and we want to give them the benefit of that in their premium price point. So when I talk about a health ecosystem and the repositioning of our brand, it's really how financial services and the retail part of our asset stack complement one another.
Talking about health is wealth, you also offer medical health insurance offerings. It's been over a year or so, if I'm not mistaken, that those offerings have been in the market. What has the take-up looked like on that front?
So it's been interesting. I mean, it's essentially a market that we're selling to and educating at the same time. So unlike a traditional financial services markets in South Africa, it is completely unsaturated. So we're building and selling into that market. So it makes it inherently difficult, but it is very pleasing that the market's taken to the price point of the products, which proves that the market exists. I think our growth year on year from a policy count perspective was over 120%, and that business unit continues to get trajectory.
Now, Roy, with DisChem operating in the medical insurance space, I guess it's natural to wonder how the NHI will affect your offerings. I know you're not a medical aid scheme, but, it's still natural to just ask what your perspective or your take is with the state of what the NHI Act currently looks like.
Yeah, so I think just my view is that the way the regulations have formed and the way the regulations need to form, they need to allow the collaboration between the private sector and the state sector. If you take a step back, the private sector has got underutilized investment in capacity. So what I mean by that is whether you look at hospitals, whether you look at clinics, whether you look at pharmacies, the private sector has invested capacity that can take on state patients. So from a service provision perspective, the state needs to utilize the private sector to deliver care at a cost that the state can afford, longer term and sustainably. That would be how we play from a service provision perspective into the NHR. And we're working with the state to develop, models of co-collaboration across healthcare professionals to pilot in some territories where we start at a primary healthcare level, because we do have clinics and dispensaries which, from a healthcare routing perspective, are the first entry point into healthcare delivery. But then there's the funded element, the administration of the funds, which is the role that our medical insurance kind of business plays, as well as the schemes. I think there needs to be, potentially there is the benefit of the private sector assisting the state in how that is administered, and that will evolve over time. I think from our perspective, we have both the administration capability that sits in the medical insurance space. If you think about it, what our medical insurance products are they are rich day-to-day primary healthcare products, which is where the start of NHI is. And at the same time, we're the service provider into those products. So we would be the same service provider into the state. So there's lots of work to be done between state and private sector in ensuring that there's a model and a framework that is not only affordable for the country, but takes into account where the infrastructure in the country sits and how it gets utilized by all of South Africa. And I guess from our perspective, there's a private sector opportunity that exists alongside that. And at some point in time, when the state is ready and when the private sector and state have collaborated, we would be able to deploy those business models directly into the state, and the state would become a payer for our services. So we really think that the model's position and complementary to what NHR is trying to achieve. And the mandate of both our group, NHR, is the same. We want more and more South Africans to have access to quality care. The mandate is the same.
Roy, thanks so much for your time and insights and just taking us through the 6 months that was for DisChem. That was Rui Morais, CEO for DisChem.